The family group call started like any normal Sunday update. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, stirring my tea while Caleb folded laundry beside me. Brooke was excited about her engagement dinner, and everyone sounded cheerful at first. Then Mom, Patricia, asked if Brooke had finalized the guest count. Brooke answered yes, and I smiled, thinking about what dress to wear. That was when Mom laughed softly in a way she thought only Brooke could hear. She said, "My dear, Natalie's kids are not invited. They are just too loud and too messy for an event like this." I froze. My finger hovered over the mute icon. I was still on the call, and so was Keisha, the event planner. Mom must have forgotten, or she assumed no one important was listening. I waited for Brooke to correct her, but all I heard was an awkward shuffle. My cheeks burned. I tried to tell myself it was a joke, but Mom kept talking like she was discussing a stain on a tablecloth instead of her own grandchildren. I did not speak. I did not trust myself to speak. The call ended moments later, but that sentence stayed ringing in my ears long after the screen went dark. The moment the call ended, I walked to the bedroom and dialed Mom. I prayed it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe her words came out wrong. But she answered with a bright voice, as if nothing had happened. When I brought it up, she sighed with impatience. "Natalie, this is a special event, and we must keep things elegant. I am only protecting the image of the dinner." Image. That word hit harder than the insult. I asked if she really thought my children did not belong. She said, "They are fine at casual visits, but this is different. They are too loud for a formal dinner." Her tone was flat, not apologetic at all. Caleb stepped into the room halfway through the call. When I hung up, he placed a hand on my shoulder and quietly said, "Maybe let it go, Nat. It is Brooke's big night." The words felt like sandpaper on my heart. Even he did not want to fight this. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a message from Keisha. "Hi Natalie, I know this is unexpected, but can we talk when you have a moment?" My stomach sank. Someone outside the family had heard everything. When I called Keisha, I tried to sound calm, but my voice still shook. She spoke gently and thanked me for returning her call. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. "I just want you to know I heard everything, and I am sorry. This kind of thing can feel very personal." I stayed quiet, waiting. She continued, "Your mother has been telling the planning team that your home is often chaotic, and that the children might overwhelm the event." She said it kindly, but the words still sliced through me. I felt exposed, judged, and embarrassed in front of someone who barely knew me. But another feeling stirred under the hurt. Suspicion. Why would Mom tell an event planner these things? Why was she painting a picture of me as someone who cannot manage her own household? Before I could ask, my phone chimed with a text from Brooke. It said only, "Please do not react yet. I will explain." My heart squeezed. That did not sound like comfort. It sounded like a warning. I thanked Keisha for her honesty, though embarrassment made my throat tight. Something deeper was going on, and I feared Mom had been telling more stories than I realized. Brooke finally called that evening. Her voice shook the moment she said my name. She told me the real reason Mom was acting this way. It was about impressing her future in-laws. They came from a wealthy family who cared a lot about reputation and neat appearances. Mom wanted everything to look perfect, and in her mind, perfect meant polished, quiet, and controlled. I listened as Brooke said Mom had been presenting me as the messy sibling for months, the one who struggles, the one who brings noise and unpredictability. I swallowed my hurt, but it felt sharp. Brooke whispered, "I am so sorry. Mom wants to build an image for Teresa, and she thinks pushing you aside makes everything cleaner." She begged me to let it go until the engagement dinner was over. I asked her one thing. "Do you believe her?" Brooke hesitated for a long moment before saying no. She said she knew my children were sweet, and she knew Mom's obsession with image sometimes went too far. but she sounded trapped, trying to balance loyalty and guilt. In the end, I told her I would not create drama before her event. I meant it, but my heart ached as if it had been squeezed by its edges. 2 days later, I met Teresa for coffee. I had suggested it gently, wanting to clear the air without dragging Brooke into another emotional storm. To my surprise, Teresa arrived cheerful and open, with a warm smile that did not match the cold picture Mom had drawn. She asked about my children right away. I told her their names, their ages, and how much they loved drawing and building little forts in the living room. She laughed softly and said children bring joy to any family moment. She seemed confused, almost disappointed, when I mentioned they were not invited. She frowned and asked, why would anyone exclude their own grandchildren from such a special night? I stared at my cup, unsure how to answer without throwing Mom under the bus. That was when I realized something important. Mom had told all of us different stories. She had shaped versions of me to fit whatever audience she wanted to impress. It was more than a mistake. It was intentional. As we stood to leave, Teresa touched my arm and said, I hope to meet your children soon. They sound wonderful. Her kindness was a soft place to land, but it raised an even bigger question. What had Mom been saying behind my back? When Mom heard I had coffee with Teresa, she called me before I even got home. Her voice came through sharp and cold. She demanded to know why I had gone behind her back. She accused me of trying to ruin Brooke's engagement and of stirring tension where there should be joy. I stood in the kitchen, holding the phone to my ear while my children colored at the table. I said calmly that Teresa was kind and only wanted to understand the situation. Mom snapped, why would you talk to her about family matters? You always need attention, Natalie. Her words hit me hard. I breathed slowly, trying not to let anger take over. I told her I only wanted truth and inclusion. I said I did not want secrets or false stories about my kids. Mom hung up without saying goodbye. I lowered the phone and turned around. Caleb was standing in the doorway. By the look on his face, I knew he had heard everything. After a long pause, he walked toward me and said he needed to tell me something he should have said months ago. I felt the ground shift under my feet. Whatever he was about to share would change the way I saw this entire situation. Caleb took my hand and led me to the couch. His face looked tired, almost ashamed. He told me that months earlier, Mom had hinted that our children's behavior was hurting the family reputation. She had told him that the little ones were too wild and that I seemed overwhelmed as a mother. She asked him to encourage me to be more polished around others. I stared at him in disbelief. He said he thought Mom was only stressed or worried, so he did not push back as strongly as he should have. He had kept it quiet, hoping the issue would fade. But now he realized his silence had made me stand alone in something I did not even know was happening. My heart cracked a little. I felt betrayed, not because he meant harm, but because the one person who promised to stand beside me had stayed quiet when I needed him most. I went to bed that night feeling hollow, unsure how to process all the tiny wounds that had built up. The next morning, Keisha sent a message. She said she needed to show me something and hoped I was sitting down. When I opened the screenshot attached, my breath left my body in one sharp pull. The screenshot showed a text thread between Mom and the planning committee. My name sat in the center of the words like a target. Mom wrote that my children were unmanageable and that I was often overwhelmed and unable to control them. She said she was trying to protect the event from chaos. I stared at the screen for a long time. This was not just one careless comment. This was a story she had repeated to others. A story she had shaped with purpose. She had made me look like the problem sibling to justify pushing me aside. My throat tightened. I felt small and exposed. I had never imagined she would speak about me like this to strangers. Then my phone rang. Brooke. She sounded frantic and tearful. She told me Mom had placed a condition on her wedding support. Mom had said she would help cover some of the wedding costs only if Brooke kept me in line and quiet during the engagement season. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to hold myself steady. I told Brooke I would not be a bargaining piece in Mom's games. She whispered that she understood. We agreed it was time for a sibling meeting. No parents. No planners. Just the truth. We met at a small diner Brooke loved, the one where we used to split fries when we were teenagers. She arrived first, wearing a stressed smile. I slid into the seat across from her and placed my phone on the table. Then I opened the screenshots and let her read everything for herself. Her face shifted from shock to sadness, then to something heavier, something close to grief. When she finished reading, she set the phone down with trembling hands. She said Mom had always pressured her to be the successful golden child. She said she always felt Mom compared us, as if only one daughter could shine at a time. She said she now realized Mom had been shaping a narrative for years. One where I was the example of what happens if you are not perfect. I listened, absorbing her confession slowly. It hurt, but it also explained so much. We agreed that we would face Mom together. But even as we planned it, a knot formed in my stomach. Mom was not someone who accepted confrontation easily. I feared she would strike back in ways we had not yet imagined. Still, Brooke squeezed my hand. She said it was time. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a small spark of hope. We planned to talk to Mom the next day, but she must have sensed something was coming. That morning, she called me with icy calm. She said if I wanted to cause trouble, she would simply remove me from the engagement dinner altogether. Her voice was steady, but her intentions sliced through me. I felt frozen, unable to respond for a few seconds. When I finally spoke, I said she was choosing image over family. She replied that I was choosing chaos over grace. Brooke heard about the threat and stormed into Mom's house. For the first time that I can remember, Brooke raised her voice at her. She defended me fiercely and refused to let Mom rewrite the story. Later that afternoon, Keisha reached out privately. She said she needed to make me aware of something. The initial deposit for the venue had been paid under my name because I had submitted the first installment months earlier when Brooke needed help. The contract listed me as a primary holder. I stared at the message, surprised. I had forgotten about that payment. I had done it without thinking, simply wanting to help Brooke. Now I had leverage. I did not want it. I did not ask for it. But it was there, heavy and unavoidable. The news about the contract sat on my mind the entire evening. I kept reading Keisha's message over and over. I had paid the first deposit when Brooke was stressed and short on time. I did it out of love, not expecting anything in return. Now it meant the venue recognized me as part owner of the event. I felt uneasy about this unexpected power. I never wanted the engagement dinner to become a battleground. The next morning, Mom called again. Her voice carried a strange mix of anger and fear. She said she would rather remove me completely than deal with my sudden attitude. I stayed quiet at first, letting her words hang in the air. She expected me to beg or soften. When I did not, she grew louder. Brooke arrived at my house soon after, looking furious. She said Mom had told relatives that I was stirring conflict and trying to overshadow her. For the first time, Brooke's patience broke. She said she would not tolerate Mom punishing me for problems Mom created. Later that afternoon, Keisha shared another detail. Because the contract listed my payment first, I had the right to approve changes to the guest list. I felt a mix of shock and conflict. I wanted fairness, not revenge. But fairness now required action. I called Keisha and told her clearly that I did not want to cancel anything. I said the night should still belong to Brooke. I only asked for one change. I wanted an updated guest list that included my children as full guests, not afterthoughts. I wanted them to be seated respectfully with family. I wanted them treated as people who mattered. Keisha listened carefully and said she respected my request. She said she would send the amendment to Mom and the planning team. She also warned me that Mom might resist, since she had been shaping her own version of the event for months. When the amendment went out, Brooke texted me a small thank you. She sounded relieved that I was not using the contract to punish anyone. I felt the same relief. I never wanted this to turn into a power match. Hours passed with no reply from Mom. I imagined her pacing, stewing, and crafting new plans. She liked control. She did not like being questioned. Now she had to confront the fact that I was no longer letting her decide who counted as family. That night, I tucked the children into bed and prayed for patience. I reminded myself that choosing calm did not mean choosing silence. It meant choosing dignity. Mom finally responded the next afternoon. Her message was polite on the surface, but every sentence felt heavy with control. She offered what she called a fair compromise. She said the children could attend the last hour of the event, but they would need to stay in a separate room with a sitter she would choose. She added that this plan would avoid noise and allow everyone to enjoy a quiet dinner. My stomach twisted. This was not inclusion. It was a performance, a way to appear generous while still hiding my children from the people she wanted to impress. I called Keisha and asked her for the full seating chart. She sent it within minutes. When I opened the document, the arrangement revealed everything. Mom had placed my family at a table far from Brooke, far from the main circle, and far from Teresa. It was a corner table, tucked away like storage. I stared at the chart for a long time. This was not about sound. It was about optics. It was about pretending my side of the family did not match the image she wanted to project. I exhaled slowly and made a choice. I would not accept crumbs. If my children were part of the family, then they deserved to be seen as part of the family. I sat Caleb down that evening and showed him the seating chart. He studied it with a frown that grew deeper by the second. I told him I would attend only if the children were treated like family, not like items to hide. My voice trembled slightly, but not from fear. It trembled from resolve. Caleb reached for my hand. He said he finally understood the weight of everything I had been carrying. He said he should have stood beside me long before now. His voice was steady and honest. For the first time in weeks, I felt a soft wave of relief through my chest. We called Brooke together and explained the situation. She apologized again, sounding tired and worn down by the tension. She said she wanted everyone included and did not understand why Mom insisted otherwise. She also said she would support whatever decision I made. I then sent Mom a calm message. I said we would attend if the children were seated with family. I said nothing else. I kept it simple and clear. Mom did not reply right away. Hours passed. My heart stayed steady. This time, I was not waiting for her approval. I was waiting for her decision, and I was ready for any outcome. The next morning, Mom finally replied. Her message was sharp and dramatic. She accused me of trying to take control of the event. She claimed I was turning Caleb against his elders. She said I was creating tension where none existed. It was the same familiar pattern: blame, guilt, and pressure. Caleb read the message and shook his head. He took my phone gently from my hands and wrote a response. He told Mom that he would not attend the engagement dinner if our children were pushed aside in any way. He said our kids deserved respect. He said this decision was his, not mine. A thick silence followed. Mom did not reply. She had pushed him for so long that she never expected him to stand firm. For the first time, she had to face both of us speaking with one voice. Even though tension still swirled around the event, I felt something shift inside me. A small opening where relief could breathe. Caleb stood beside me now. Brooke understood the truth. And the engagement dinner was very close. Whatever happened next would set the tone for our family future. I felt fear, yes, but also strength. I was no longer alone in this fight for simple respect. 2 days before the engagement dinner, I invited Brooke, Teresa, and a few close relatives to a casual afternoon at the park. I wanted something light and natural, far away from planning tension. Caleb packed snacks, and the children carried coloring books, soft toys, and their small picnic blanket. The sun was warm, and the air felt calm, like the world had paused long enough for us to breathe. The kids settled under a tree near us and began to draw. They were quiet, focused, and full of gentle joy. Brooke watched them and smiled, almost in surprise. She said she forgot how sweet they could be when they had space and peace. Teresa joined us with warm greetings and a small bag of cookies for the kids. She sat on the bench next to me and asked about their drawings, giving them soft praise. Everything felt simple and kind. Then I saw Mom. She walked across the grass with a stiff expression, as if she had come to inspect something. She had not been invited, but she came anyway. She watched the children with a hard stare, waiting for them to make a mistake. I felt my chest tighten, but I stayed calm. The truth would reveal itself soon enough. Mom stood near the children and began pointing out little things in a sharp tone. She said one child should sit straighter. She told another to hold the crayon gently or it would break. She gave long instructions that had nothing to do with the moment. She kept trying to catch them in some kind of misbehavior, but the kids stayed calm. They kept drawing quietly as if her voice floated at the edge of their world. Teresa watched the whole thing with raised eyebrows. After a few minutes, she stepped closer and asked Mom softly why she seemed so tense when the children were being perfectly polite. Mom stiffened. She said she was only trying to keep order. Teresa replied that the order was already present. Her voice was gentle but firm, and I saw Mom's confidence shake for the first time. Brooke walked to my side and whispered, "She is losing her story." I felt both sadness and relief. Mom had spent so long trying to prove a point that she forgot the truth does not bend forever. When we were ready to leave, the kids waved goodbye to everyone. They had behaved beautifully without trying. They simply were themselves, and that was enough to show the room who they truly were. After the park gathering, Teresa asked Brooke if they could talk alone. They walked to a quieter part of the park while I packed up the toys with Caleb. When Brooke returned, her eyes were wide with surprise. She said Teresa believed it was wrong to exclude children from a family celebration. She said family milestones should include all loved ones, especially the little ones who give life to the moment. I felt warmth fill my chest. Teresa was not just polite. She understood, and her voice carried weight that Mom could not brush aside. But the peace did not last long. Later that evening, Keisha called with uneasy news. Mom had contacted the planning team again. She told them she wanted my name removed from all event documents because she felt it created a power imbalance. She said she wanted full control over the final plans. Keisha explained that the contract could not be changed that way without full review. She also warned me that Mom seemed ready to create a public narrative, one that painted me as difficult and dramatic. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. I felt the old ache return, but now it met a stronger part of me, a part that refused to shrink again. The next morning, I found out Mom had posted something online. It was a short message that spoke about protecting peace from disruptive relatives. She did not use my name, but everyone in the family understood who she meant. Some relatives sent me messages asking if everything was all right. Others stayed silent, waiting for drama to unfold. My hands shook for a moment. I felt hurt, but I did not want to answer with anger. I wrote a calm statement and posted it. I said family should be built on inclusion, love, and understanding. I said children learn respect when they feel they belong, not when they are pushed away. I did not mention Mom. I did not mention conflict. I spoke only about values. Brooke called me right after. She said my message was strong, gentle, and full of grace. She also said several relatives reached out to her, asking why Mom had been acting this way. Later that afternoon, the family elders called a meeting. They wanted to settle things before the engagement dinner. I walked into that meeting expecting pressure to stay quiet. Instead, something very different happened. Someone finally spoke a truth that had been waiting for years. The meeting took place in Aunt Renee's living room. Several relatives sat around the space, looking tired and anxious. Mom stood near the window with her arms crossed. She looked ready to defend herself before anyone even spoke. The elders asked me to explain my side. I kept my voice calm as I described what had happened. I spoke about the comments, the seating chart, and the exclusion of my children. I showed the screenshots Keisha had shared. No drama. Only facts. Mom tried to interrupt, saying I was exaggerating, but the elders asked her to let me finish. When I was done, everyone turned to her. She lifted her chin and said she had only been trying to protect the family image. That was when Aunt Renee stepped forward. She said this was not the first time Mom had pushed family members aside to control how things looked. She shared examples from years ago. Times when she excluded other children for being too energetic. Times when she kept cousins away from gatherings because they did not fit her idea of perfection. The room went silent. Mom's face was drained of color. She tried to deny it, but the weight of truth was stronger than her words. The room stayed quiet after Aunt Renee spoke. I could feel the shift in the air. It felt like someone had opened a window in a stuffy house. Mom tried to steady herself. She lifted her hand as if to wave the truth away. But the elders had heard enough. They asked her why she felt the need to control everything, even at the cost of hurting family. Mom looked around the room and saw that no one was rushing to defend her. Her voice cracked a little when she said she only wanted everything to look beautiful for Brooke and her future in-laws. She said she felt judged before anyone had even met her. Aunt Renee shook her head. She said beauty without kindness does not last. She said a family held together by fear will crumble. I sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded in my lap. I expected to feel anger, but instead I felt something softer. Maybe it was sadness or tiredness or both. I did not want to fight anymore. I only wanted my children to be seen as part of this family. For the first time, Mom's shoulders drooped. It was the look of someone who finally saw the cost of her choices. Mom opened her mouth to explain again, but her words stumbled. Several relatives shared their own memories of times she had pushed them aside. One talked about a wedding where she asked certain children to stay home. Another talked about a birthday party where she kept a cousin in a side room so the pictures would look cleaner. The more they shared, the more Mom's confidence faded. She tried to say it had all been harmless or misunderstood. But the stories were too clear. A pattern stood before her, and she could not sweep it away. I sat still, listening. I felt small waves of hurt rise and fall as I learned how long this had been happening. I was not the first person she had made feel less. I was simply the one who had finally said no. Mom pressed her fingers to her forehead. She said she never meant to be cruel. She said she only feared being judged by Brooke's future in-laws. She said she wanted everything to look orderly and perfect. The elders responded with simple truth. They said love is louder than appearance. They said children bring life to celebrations. They said pushing family away creates wounds that last much longer than a single night. Mom's lips trembled. The room waited. Mom finally sat down. She looked smaller somehow, like a storm cloud that had lost its weight. She said she had spent her life trying to look perfect because she feared people would see her flaws. She said the pressure grew stronger as Brooke's new future grew closer. She said she thought pushing anything messy away would protect the family image. I listened quietly. I understood fear. I understood wanting to look strong. But fear cannot excuse the choices she made. I told her gently that my children were not messes to hide. They were loved, smart, and full of joy. I told her they deserved respect. I told her I deserved respect too. Mom wiped her eyes. She said she wanted a fresh start but did not know how to fix what she had broken. I said we could move forward, but with clear boundaries. I said I would not accept judgment disguised as help. I said my children would not be excluded again. Mom nodded slowly. She did not argue. She did not push back. She simply accepted the truth in front of her. That moment felt like the first steady breath after a long climb. The evening of the engagement dinner arrived. The venue glowed with soft lights and warm music. I walked in with Caleb and the children beside me. My heart beat fast, but I held my head high. The new seating plan placed us at a table close to Brooke and Teresa. It felt right, like a small corner of the world was finally balanced. When Brooke saw the children, she knelt down and hugged them tightly. They smiled and handed her a small handmade card. Inside it, they had written a short message in their careful handwriting. It said they were proud of her and excited for her new adventure. The room softened around us. People smiled. Teresa wiped a small tear from her eye. Even some relatives who hardly knew my children bent down to admire their drawings. The children stood politely, speaking softly as they introduced themselves. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Truly seen. Mom stood across the room, watching everything quietly. Her face held a mix of regret and wonder. She looked at the children as if she were seeing them for the first time, not as problems but as people who brought light to the moment. The night felt warm, gentle, and whole. Near the end of the dinner, Mom stood and asked for a moment of attention. The room grew quiet. She turned toward me and the children. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. She said she had made mistakes. She said she had allowed fear to guide her instead of love. She said she was sorry for the hurt she caused. Then she thanked the children for reminding her what celebration is really for. The children looked at me, unsure how to respond, so I nodded. They smiled shyly and waved at her. I stood and accepted her apology with calm firmness. I told her we wanted peace, but we also wanted respect. I said we could move forward only if she treated all of us as full members of the family. She nodded with real understanding. It was the first time she had listened without trying to explain or defend. Brooke stepped beside me and placed her hand over mine. She whispered, "Thank you for standing strong." Caleb squeezed my shoulder gently. The night ended with laughter, warm music, and the soft hum of peace finally settling into the room. My children fell asleep in the car on the way home. As I watched them in the rear seat, I felt a deep truth settle in my heart. Love is stronger when everyone is invited to the table.